Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that y'all can see the presentation that I have prepared for you today. Thank you, Chelsea. As she had mentioned, I'm with Workforce Solutions Capital Area, and I'm here to provide you with some information on resources that we're able to provide. Typically, we label these as employer resources, and we find that nonprofit organizations don't usually take advantage of some of the resources because they might not think that it applies to a nonprofit organization. So I'm here to tell you otherwise and provide some information about the employer resources that we are using to support employers during the COVID-19 pandemic, that they are also here to support your organizations as well. I'm the Director of Upskilling and Advancement. I'm also leading our rapid response program, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. But I just want to say to all of you, thank you for the work that you do. I'm very passionate about working in nonprofits and helping people. So I know that what you guys do is so important, and I hope that Workforce Solutions is able to support you in your efforts of providing additional support to the community. So with that, I will go to the next slide. There we go. So if you don't know about Workforce Solutions, I wanted to provide you a little insight and some information about it. We are a nonprofit organization, but we work very closely with the Texas Workforce Commission, which is a government entity. We are a workforce board, which are around throughout all of the nation, but specifically Workforce Solutions has 28 different offices throughout all of Texas. So if you know other people in parts of Texas, they have a Workforce Solutions office that is also able to provide these same supports. We work very closely with the Texas Workforce Commission, and a majority of our funding comes from them and the federal government, along with other private partners. We serve Travis County and the Capital Area Board office. So we're number 14. We're Travis County, and we're a little heart of Travis County. But as I mentioned, the other board areas serve the rest of Texas, so there are supports throughout the entire state. So Rapid Response is a program that is focused on helping individuals get reconnected with employment when layoffs or closures occur. So we work directly with employers who are facing layoffs or closing to assist their employees with reconnecting to work. This provides assistance to the employer because they're able to leave from their employees on good terms. They're not getting the negative connotation with providing layoffs, and we're able to provide direct support to the individual so that they aren't on unemployment benefits for a long period of time, and they're able to re-enter into the workforce and stimulate the economy. In addition, we're also assisting employers with navigating what the unemployment process looks like. So I'll talk a little bit about what that is, but the other part of the rapid response services is also strategizing and talking with an employer about how to avert the layoff itself. So if we're able to get ahead of it, we can strategize and look into what resources there are to prevent an employer from laying off people. So what does that layoff aversion look like? One option is shared work. This is a program that's provided directly from the Texas Workforce Commission, and we provide support in filling out the application and providing you additional information that's needed to apply for it. But basically what shared work is that it supplements the employee's lost wages due to reduced hours with a partial unemployment benefit. So if you're reducing an employee's hours between 10 and 40%, you can apply for this program so that they can be compensated unemployment benefits for those wages they're losing from the lost hours. There's a few questions that some people have with that in regards to individuals who are on a salary, or what those hours have to look like, what's the wages being reduced look like. It's not necessarily for wage reduction, it's more the hours being reduced itself. They're losing a portion of their work time. So that's an option for averting layoffs. You're able to maintain and retain your workforce through the shared work program. And then upon the completion or wrapping up of the pandemic, when things go back to normal, whatever that's going to look like, you can add their hours back in and bring them back either to full-time or whatever they were at, and you're able to maintain that employee, which is a benefit for your company so that you're not having to look for new talent and rehire and go through that process, which can be timely and costly. Another option for layoff aversion is training. So training your incumbent workers either through the Incumbent Worker Training Fund or the Skills Development Fund can help upskill your employees so that they remain relevant to the evolving workforce. So we're seeing some companies that are having a higher demand in one area than they are in another area of their staff. So being able to take either entry-level workers or workers that aren't necessarily needed during this time because of reduced work, because the closures or something occurring with the pandemic, you are able to train them so that they can provide the skills that are needed for those positions that are in higher demand. So that's an option to look into. We know that training has also been really relevant in regards to working remotely and accessing technologies that some people might not be familiar with. Something that we've been discussing is looking at in the education system. A lot of teachers are going to have to learn how to provide online learning, and they might need additional training for that. So how can this type of funding provide the support for the adapting workforce? So that's one example, but this can be used in many ways. Additionally, other funding can be provided to offset the costs to help ensure that you can maintain the workforce. With layoff aversion funding, between Workforce Solutions and the organization, it's important to have like a consultation and discuss what this can look like. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's different for many organizations and businesses. With this pandemic, we're seeing that purchasing remote access equipment could help avert a layoff so that employees can work from home, offsetting costs for cleaning or sanitation so that they can maintain the working environment and meet the CDC requirements to stay open. And we've also talked to some employers about security costs to maintain their physical property while there's limited staff on site. So looking into what ways you can offset a cost so that you can maintain the wages for your employees and avert any layoffs that might occur due to the increase in costs that you're facing due to COVID-19. And as I had mentioned, these can be used in many different ways that we kind of have to get creative about what that looks like. One thing with the layoff aversion funding, this comes from the Texas Workforce Commission, is provided to Workforce Solutions. And we're in the process of applying for additional funding to help deploy this to employers in need. But it's important to get ahead of it. We have an application available if you're interested in this that you can fill out to look into how this can help your company. Another option is temporary layoffs. So if you do have to lay off individuals, we want to be able to make the process easy for you and help you in any way that we can. So temporary layoffs, it allows an employer to furlough their employee up to 12 weeks and then hire them back once the crisis has passed. Of course, we don't know when this will necessarily be over, but the 12 weeks kind of gives you a window so that you can maintain them on your payroll. In other cases, you'd want to talk with your HR professionals or looking into other ways that you could either maintain their benefits, if that's something that you're interested in doing while they're laid off, or providing additional support to them. So that's something you can take into consideration. Workforce Solutions doesn't have that type of guidance, unfortunately, but we can help you with the process of what a temporary layoff looks like. Right now, currently with unemployment benefits, the work search requirements have been waived by the governor, as well as the waiting week. We don't know how long the work search requirements are going to be waived, most likely throughout the pandemic, but that is something that's undetermined necessarily. So with the temporary layoff, the work search requirements are always waived because they have a return to work date with an employer, so they don't necessarily need to be searching for work. So let's say in the next month or so, the work search requirements are reinstated. Individuals who are on a temporary layoff wouldn't necessarily have to meet those requirements since they have a date to return to work. They receive the same unemployment benefit amount during this period, so it's not changing the amount that they would be receiving because it's temporary. And as I mentioned, it helps you maintain your workforce. Another option is mass claims. So you can do this with a permanent layoff or a temporary layoff, and this helps streamline the process of unemployment benefit claims. So it's a benefit to your employees because they don't have to take on the burden of filing unemployment themselves. And especially during this time, the Texas Workforce Commission is seeing such a high volume of unemployment benefits coming through that it's been really challenging for some individuals to actually file their claim and get it processed through the system. So if you have a layoff of 10 or more people, then you can file a mass claim on their behalf. And it also negates the need for the Texas Workforce Commission to reach out directly to the employer to confirm that the individual was laid off. So that also helps benefit you so that you're not having to go back and answer claims that are coming through the system from the Texas Workforce Commission. And as you submit the mass claim, you can clearly state that it was due to the pandemic, due to COVID-19, so you don't have to worry about some of the chargebacks that are being dismissed due to the pandemic that's occurring. I also wanted to provide you some information about the child care assistance that we're providing to essential workers. There are some restrictions that apply to our child care services, but we have an application on our website now. It's easier to earn and receive, it's faster to apply, and it provides a 3 months subsidized of care. So we don't want individuals to not return to work, or the individuals who are currently at work, the essential workers, to have to worry about the child care assistance, especially while the schools are closed. And it's a challenging time to know where your child is going to be while you're doing the essential jobs needed during this time. So more information on that can be seen on our website. And we have information about the essential workers listed, and as well as the application process. We're also providing assistance directly to individuals. So whether they're laid off or not, these webinars that we're creating weekly can be beneficial for anybody necessarily. It provides information on resume building, jobs that are hiring if they were laid off, interviewing skills, and then also telecommuting and working strategies. So how to focus while you're working at home. We have other additional webinars that have been coming out on Wednesdays, and those can be seen on our YouTube channel. These are beneficial for individuals who are still working, but also those who have been recently laid off, so that they can, it might have been a long time since someone had written a resume if they've been working for a company in one period. So we want to be able to provide that support of how they can get back into searching for work and looking for employment. We're also helping with career exploration if they want to adjust or pivot, or even advance in their career, and what that looks like, and what type of post-secondary education might be required, or additional assistance. We're also hosting a Jobs Now page. So for individuals who have been laid off, we're trying to reconnect them to work. if that's what they're looking to do. So we're pulling job postings online and providing them in one location on our website. We're going through and contacting the employer to confirm that the job posting is still open in itself, and so that individuals that have been laid off can look for work and reconnect to employment. If you are hiring, we'd love to list your positions on this. And if you have individuals or you know individuals who are looking for work, we're happy to connect them to employment. We can also help with individuals writing their resumes and applying for the job itself. And we have a telephone line that they can call and speak with one of our Career Center staff to help them through that process. Work in Texas is also a great resource for posting jobs and looking for work. There's a virtual recruiter, excuse me. There's layoff market information tools, and Workforce Solutions staff are available to support. So on the company side of Work in Texas, we actually have staff who work with businesses to ensure that their job postings are available on the system and that they're connecting to local talent here in Austin. So if you need assistance with either writing the job description or you already have a job description, you can just send it over to our staff, and upon creating a Work in Texas account, they will automatically upload it into the account for you and post it so that you can get connected to talent right away. I wanted to talk a little bit about our 3 career centers. We have one in North Austin, East Austin, and South Austin. Our career centers are currently closed right now, but we are operating remotely, so we're available via phone and email. And our North office is also providing free Wi-Fi in the parking lot. So if you have any clients or staff that are needing of accessing internet, they can go to our North location and be able to access internet for free. I wanted to provide you our social media pages because we are looking at posting and providing helpful information during this time, additional resources to individuals, and connecting them to the information that they need. We know that it's challenging to navigate a lot of things during this time, so being able to provide it on our social media pages has been really beneficial to connect people to the information they're looking for. Additionally, our YouTube channel has those webinars that I had discussed earlier, and our entire website itself has been redone to be a COVID-19 resource in regards to the workforce and additional assistance. So a lot of information can also be seen on our website. Lastly, we're here to help. You can see our website there, and as I had mentioned, we've completely redone it so that it can provide assistance to individuals, employers, nonprofit organizations. The list goes on in regards to workforce development and assistance. And we also have a single phone number that can route you to any staff that can provide additional assistance to you. In regards to unemployment benefits, one thing that I forgot to include in my presentation is that the process of unemployment benefits can be very challenging and something that Workforce Solutions is able to provide support on. Since we work closely with the Texas Workforce Commission, is information sessions for individuals who are struggling with applying for unemployment benefits or have additional questions. Getting connected on the phone line is very challenging with the Texas Workforce Commission right now with the high volume of calls. So being able to provide that local support through Workforce Solutions, I think has been really beneficial for individuals applying for benefits, especially those who have never done it before. It can be a confusing process. So we're there to navigate some of those challenges. So with that, that's all I have. I'm happy to answer your questions that might have been coming through. I haven't seen if there's any in the chat, but if you guys want to provide any questions in the chat, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I also have links in this presentation for some of the information that I provided, so I can send Chelsea the PowerPoint so that you guys can access that information and click on those links to see some additional resources.
And if you're having trouble with the chat, feel free to unmute as well if you have a specific question to ask.
Hi, Amber. I'm Myra Bull. In regard to furloughs, you said the furlough is for 12 weeks, and Texas Workforce Commission would work with providing them unemployment for those 12 weeks. What if we don't end up them back? Does that throw them into a whole different loop?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with the temporary layoffs, that does last up until 12 weeks. We've been letting employers know that they can put that full 12-week time, since they don't necessarily know when their employee will be returning. If they return earlier, that's not an issue. That's fine. The Texas Workforce Commission won't mind at all. And additionally, if they go past the 12 weeks, that's okay too. So they'll just be moved from a temporary layoff classification to a permanent layoff classification. It doesn't adjust their benefits in any way as far as the monetary amount. The Texas Workforce Commission, from what I understand, they either notify the individual or the employer and say that they're now switched over to a permanent layoff, essentially. With the permanent layoff, as I had mentioned, the work search is required. It's currently waived, but if it were to come back and be reinstated, then in the permanent layoff classification, individuals would have to search for work since they didn't have a return to work date, if that makes sense.
So who lets the Texas,
but it is okay.
Who lets the Texas Workforce Commission know if it's turned into a permanent, the employer or the employee?
It's dependent. The Texas Workforce Commission usually communicates between both sides of it. So that's something I'd have to get further clarification on from my unemployment specialist. But as far as I know, it is okay for them to move past those 12 weeks into a permanent layoff classification.
And one more question. Employer has asked an employee to come back to work, and the employee refuses and doesn't meet all those criteria as mentioned in the paper today from the governor's office. Does the employer contact Texas Workforce Commission to let them know they offered employment? And if so, how does an employer do that?
Yeah, that's a growing question, and definitely something that's been on the top of people's minds lately. That's really something that's taken case by case of the situation itself. So if an employee is refusing to go back to work, typically outside of COVID-19, they would be revoked their benefits because they're denying suitable work. Of course, the employer needs to be offering it to them either at the same wage or around the same area. So they can't deter them by lowering the wage. So it really depends if the individual is feeling that safety is a concern for them. The Texas Workforce Commission will go in and investigate both sides of why they're denying work and what the employer is doing to ensure that it is a safe environment and it is suitable for them to return to the job. The process of contacting the Texas Workforce Commission is not something that I'm yet familiar with of employers notifying them that they have denied it. I know that the Office of Employers with Commissioner Demerson, that they have an email address and phone number that employers can contact if they're facing difficulties, but I don't know if that's the formal process to report that. But I can look into that and provide that information to you at a later time. We
can share that out via email or on our resources page, as I'm sure that's developing.
Yes, everything for the most part throughout all of COVID-19 has been a day-by-day and week-by-week process of learning new rules and regulations in regards to what the federal government is providing, as well as the state adjusting to those rules and regulations. So it has been taking some time, and each thing is kind of taken by a case-by-case basis, dependent on the situation.
Yeah. And Amber, we have a few questions in the chat.
I see that.
Yeah. What information or wording should employees use if applying for benefits due to a layoff?
Yes, great question. So they're going to want to apply and make sure that they include disaster, COVID-19, coronavirus, pandemic in their application process. So on the first page of the application, it'll ask if they were laid off due to a disaster, and it actually has a checkbox of COVID-19, and then the other option is nothing or something like that. So they're going to want to check that it was due to COVID-19 if that is the factual matter. And when they proceed into their application process, they'll have another question that asks why they were no longer working. And it'll ask like if they were laid off, or if they were fired, or if they quit. And then the other option is disaster. So they can select disaster, and we'll ask them additional questions in regard to that disaster. The system is set up, the questions are set up to be more of a natural disaster. So if they're applying, they'll notice that it's more geared towards like hurricanes and tornadoes than it is a health pandemic. But they'll just want to keep in mind that the virus is the reason that they're not currently working, and list that to ensure that the system knows to code them correctly, and that their work search remains waived and their waiting week remains waived. Because if they're not classifying it as a disaster pandemic, Texas Workforce Commission has to go back and reconfirm and then waive those two requirements. So it is really important. That's a great question to make sure that they classify it correctly.
Amber, are applications for funding through the Layoff Aversion program on your website?
They're not on our website. We do ask that you have a consultation with myself or my colleague so that you can learn more information, and that we can kind of strategize and talk through what layoff aversion funding would look like, or training. That way we can get more information and also kind of assist you through what that application process will look like. I can provide you that application so that you can review it, but we do ask that you also do the consultation with us.
And then we have another question of, what if a person's position is removed? Is that the same as layoff or firing? What's the distinction there?
Could you repeat that question?
What if a person's position is removed or eliminated? Is that the same as layoff or firing?
I don't know if I'm quite understanding that question. If the position is removed or eliminated, I would assume that the individual was let go of the position, in which case I'd assume they would have been laid off. If they were moved to another area of work with your organization, then they would still be employed. It's really dependent on if they're working with you still or not.
What if they're not working with you, but you're not in need of that position? Like your organization isn't in that position anymore.
I think that might classify as a layoff still. If the individual is reduced from employment with you due to no fault of their own, then that is considered a layoff. So
Awesome.
If they're relieved of that job duty or that position because the work is no longer available, I think that would be classified as a layoff. I'm sure that there's more information in regards to that on the Texas Workforce Commission website, but that's how I would view that. If they're no longer employed with you due to no fault of their own, that's typically what we would classify as a layoff.
And we have one that somebody received a form yesterday for an employee, and one block asked when the employee can return. What if you don't know? Do you just leave that blank?
Great question. Could you repeat the end of it for me? I just want to make sure and clarify that I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah. One block on the form yesterday for an employee asked when can the employee return? And what if you don't know the answer to that? Do you just leave that blank?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're expecting to bring that employee back, or you're maintaining them on within your organization. If you're saying that, yes, they still are an employee, but temporarily we're letting them go or laying them off, then you can list up to the maximum of 12 weeks in which they'll be there. You can classify them as a temporary layoff. I don't know if you can list further than 12 weeks if that causes any issues or not, but I'm sure that you could put a future date that is undetermined by you, and that wouldn't necessarily be an issue. As I had mentioned, if you bring them back to work before the time that you had listed on the application, the Texas Workforce Commission isn't going to mind that because they want people to be working. So that's fine. And if they go past the time that you had indicated, that too is okay. The Texas Workforce Commission will probably just contact you to confirm, like, yes, this individual is still laid off, and we haven't brought them back to work. And then I have a question that was sent directly to me that says, if we have an employee hired through your Workforce Solutions program and their last day is today, will they qualify for unemployment? We will be unable to hire them permanently as planned right now. That's a great question. So Workforce Solutions, we provide subsidized employment. So we cover the wages so that individuals can work with other employers that aren't necessarily us. And that's a great program to help people get work experience and do on-the-job training so that the employer can hire them after that time is complete, after the program is completed. So if you guys are looking for staff or looking to hire, that's a great option that you guys could look into. As far as that goes for the individual applying for unemployment benefits, if I don't necessarily know what that looks like in regards to them being laid off. The Texas Workforce Commission has indicated, or at least my unemployment specialist always says, that if an individual is uncertain if they will qualify for unemployment benefits, they should apply anyway and let the Texas Workforce Commission determine that themselves. So everyone is free to apply for benefits. Whether they qualify or not is another thing. Unemployment benefits are determined by the eligible wages earned in the state of Texas, so that the Texas Workforce Commission can provide them a benefit. That is in regards to if their employer has been contributing to the unemployment tax. So that's really dependent on the employer's end as well. If they were in our program, that's something that I would have to look into because I know that our funding is different. But the income time period that they look at is up to about a year. So currently, as of April 5th, the Texas Workforce Commission is pulling wages for individuals applying from January 2019 all the way to December 2019 and determining if they had enough income to provide them a benefit, if that answers your question. If they had worked outside of Texas, the individual has to request that those wages are included in their claim, in which case the Texas Workforce Commission has to reach out to the other state and have them pull and provide the wages for them.
Amber, one question about, does the size of an organization or the type of organization, like a profit or a for-profit or a nonprofit, affect if the person can or cannot receive unemployment benefits? In other words, are all employees obligated to pay out the same level of benefit? How does that work?
That's a great question. So it kind of covers into what I was discussing about how the Texas Workforce Commission determines if they are eligible for a benefit or not. So it's dependent on their employer. If that employer is contributing to the unemployment benefit, I know that some nonprofit organizations do contribute to that, and some, I believe, do not contribute to the unemployment benefit or the tax that is required. I don't know all of the rules and regulations in regards to that, so it's difficult for me to answer that specifically on the employer's end. But with the stimulus bill that the federal government has passed, anybody that is not currently working, that has been laid off or released from employment, is most likely eligible for some type of benefit. So with the stimulus bill, there's pandemic unemployment insurance assistance. And what that does is it provides it provides a benefit to those who wouldn't necessarily qualify for benefits otherwise. So self-employed individuals, independent contractors, gig workers, etc., they don't typically qualify because they're not contributing to that unemployment tax. But with the federal pandemic unemployment assistance, they are receiving a benefit in regards to that. The federal government is also providing an additional $600 per week on top of the unemployment benefit that the individual is eligible for. So if they earn at least $1 during the week that they're requesting payment, they'll receive that additional $600 as well. So what the federal assistance looks like to receive is that the Texas Workforce Commission is actually using the general unemployment benefit application to automatically screen those individuals that don't qualify for the regular unemployment benefits and classify them into the federal pandemic assistance. So a lot of people have been confused because they'll receive a denial of the general unemployment benefits, but later their system will turn over into the pandemic. So TWC, the Texas Workforce Commission, is trying to provide notice and guidance to individuals that that's the case, and that's what people are seeing happening.
Awesome. Any other questions?
If you are serving either individuals or you have experienced layoffs and they're struggling with the unemployment benefits process, please let me know, and I'm happy to direct them to some of the webinars that we're doing. We're providing these directly to employers that are reaching out to us because the need and demand is too high for us to manage if we posted it out entirely. But if you contact and reach out to me, I'm happy to provide assistance to those individuals. Outside of that, our workforce centers are getting calls constantly in regards to assistance for unemployment benefits. So our staff are helping everyone who calls into our offices to the best of their ability. We're not unemployment specialists and we don't operate the service itself, but since we work closely with the Texas Workforce Commission, we're able to answer some of the questions effectively. Excuse me.
And we have a question about mailing a form.
Yeah.
Is the mail the best?
I'm assuming that the form that you're asking about is probably what the Texas Workforce Commission is asking in regards to if the employee or individual has been laid off. Judy, could you let me know if that's accurate or not, if that's what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, the Texas Workforce Commission, and this is good to know both on the individual side and the employer side, in the application process, the Texas Workforce Commission asked for your last employer. And they asked that not to determine your wages or any additional information. They asked for the last employer to determine that you were in fact laid off by that company and are eligible to receive unemployment benefits. So they'll reach out to the employer. When the employer receives that form, they should notify the Texas Workforce Commission in regards to why that individual was released to work, whether they were laid off, they quit, or they were fired. I think there's options on the form that they can select. Employers can do this through their online portal that the Texas Workforce Commission has. If you don't have an account, you'll have to set one up. It's an employer benefit service portal that's online, so you can answer those requests from individuals saying that they applied for unemployment benefits and the confirmation that the Texas Workforce Commission needs from the employer. You can also do it, I'm assuming by paper is what you've received, or an email. I don't know what that process looks like exactly, but I'm sure that on the form it might have instructions of where to mail it back to. The Texas Workforce Commission basically, I don't know the exact time frame because I haven't learned that in this process of learning unemployment benefits, but the Texas Workforce Commission gives the employer a certain amount of time. I think it's about a week to respond. to that notification, and then they give them X number of days after that, in addition to respond in regards to if that individual does qualify for unemployment benefits. If the employer doesn't respond after X amount of days, then they will provide the individual unemployment benefits from my understanding. If the quicker you respond is the quicker that your employee is going to be able to receive benefits. So if they are eligible for benefits, if they were laid off, you're going to want to submit that as soon as you can, so that they can start receiving their payment. If it's not received, the individual is going to continue to see that the Texas Workforce Commission is looking into their account, and that confuses them because it doesn't necessarily give them additional information of, we're waiting on your employer to notify us that you qualify. So people call the Texas Workforce Commission daily and try to get through, and it's a struggle because it's a lot of people. Yes. So yes, you should mail the form back, or if you're able to get onto your online portal, you can submit that answer online as well. Additionally, we've also seen people getting confused by that question. So of listing their last employer, they'll think that it's used to determine like the income or the amount that they've earned. So they'll end up listing a previous employer that they might have quit from or got fired from. And when the Texas Workforce Commission reaches out to that employer, it causes issues with their benefit because the employer is answering back honestly, like, yes, they quit or were fired. So if you're receiving any notices from employees that you didn't lay off from but had worked for you previously, let them know that they had filled out that application question incorrectly and that they should have indicated their last employer that did lay them off, regardless for how much they made or how long they had been with that employer. That's a mistake that can be really costly to individuals. So if you do experience layoffs as well, let your employees know that question is really important not to mess up.
Awesome.
Any additional questions?
Awesome.
All right, well, you guys are welcome to reach out to me. I'm sure that Chelsea can provide you with my contact information if you have additional questions, how to access our services, if you want to set up meetings to discuss that layoff aversion funding and what that looks like, and how that can apply to your organization. If you are facing layoffs, the information sessions that we're providing are really trying to help people not make those little mistakes that are really costly during this high volume time of people applying for benefits. So getting that information to them before the layoff process begins can be really beneficial. We know that that's a difficult subject to talk about, but I think that a lot of individuals appreciate their employers setting up additional resources for them when they can't maintain them in the workforce.
Absolutely. I just want to take a minute and thank Amber again for all of her support with this. I know these are such complicated, hard questions to be answering and asking, so thank you so much for making time for us today. And I will absolutely follow up with this. It sounds like we can share this PowerPoint out and your contact information, and then we'll share the copy of this recording as well. Just a few other resources we want to draw y'all's attention to. We have a Mission Capital COVID-19 resource page that's specific, where we're specifically gathering different resources. You can submit the resources or find resources there. And it's also where we're collecting our data insights. We did a pretty large pulse survey and are doing a follow-up survey now. We'll include a link to that. The survey closes on Sunday. If your organization hasn't filled that out, we'd love to hear from you. But this is where we're really kind of tracking the response for our industry, for our sector. The Mission Capital Facebook group is where we share out a lot of in-time webinars. We watch for questions, and you're welcome to ask questions and share with your peers. And then we have two more HR operations type support coming in May, support for virtual working. I know our governor order is ending, but our local orders, all sorts of things. We're going to, I'm sure, stay super creative with our remote working. So the IT guys organization is here to kind of talk to y'all about different options and ways to support your employees, especially as we, I know a lot of locations are thinking about doing a mix of remote and in-person working. So things will get exciting again. And then supporting your team by centering equity. Our own Irina Meza is going to lead us through some questions and conversations about how do we make sure that we're supporting our employees' mental health and well-being in the office, and thinking about how we prioritize people of color's needs as we look to the future and make some tough decisions. We're keeping in mind, you know, who's disproportionately impacted and how our decisions can help us make some equitable decisions as we move forward. And we're always available. If you have questions, please feel free, email us, membership@Mission Capital, events@Mission Capital. We're here to help and support y'all. I often don't have the answer to the legal technical question, but I'm happy to connect you with people who do have those answers. And I'll send a follow-up email that will also include an evaluation. Please let us know how we did today, how helpful this was, what questions you have, and what other things you need to see from us. We're here to support you. I'm going to end with a thank you because I'm loving this one, because I think A, I want to be on a beach so bad. So I love seeing sand. And B, I think it's really all of us in this together. It might feel like we're on an island, but we're really all a part of this. So thank you so much for joining us today. I know times are tight, and I'm excited to let y'all go. Enough time to take a bathroom break before your next Zoom meeting. But I hope you guys stay safe out there, and then please keep in touch and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.